and welcome to a very festive edition of Reading Aloud. There'll be heroes, villains and lots of fun as we explore the enduring appeal of the pantomime story. And as with all good pantos, there'll be a few surprises.
Rats, that's all anyone ever talks about these days.
As we unwrap this giant Christmas present of reading delights for you and those you teach.
Coming up, we'll be ripping open and revealing the very best books for Christmas. Meeting Raymond Briggs, creator of The Snowman and that very grumpy Father Christmas.
Happy blooming Christmas to you too.
And then we're going to
Finding fun in poetry with these 6- and 7-year-olds.
Okay. Halfway down, he ripped his pants.
Discovering the special signature on this first edition of A Christmas Carol. And hearing a teenager's take on the Queen's speech.
She is waiting for me to do a sexy time.
Borat style. Yes, it's panto time.
Oh, no, it isn't.
Oh, yes, it is. Here in Nuneaton, there's excitement as the audience arrive for tonight's performance of The Pied Piper of Hamelin. Backstage, it's bedlam as the cast and crew ready to stage this very traditional pantomime. It's taken a year to prepare, but in less time, you could create something really special.
Why not put on a panto at your school? They're fun and they bring together the whole school, parents and community. It uses all the elements of literacy, reading and writing, speaking and listening, and a lot more. Music, dance, design. Just pick a well-known story, invent a few modern and local bits to put in it, and try a few traditional comic techniques like, he's behind you. Oh, yes, he is. Oh, no, he isn't. You could write some of it in rhyming couplets. Try writing some songs or adapting old ones. Put all that together, and you've got yourself a show.
5 minutes, gents, 5 minutes.
All right.
We'll be seeing a lot more of the Pied Piper panto later in the programme.
We couldn't make a special Christmas edition of Reading Aloud without spending some time with my favourite writer of Christmas stories, Charles Dickens. Do you know, when he died, a market girl here in London said, "Dickens? Dead? Then will Father Christmas die too?" So where better to find out more about the great man's festive legacy than here at 48 Doughty Street in Bloomsbury, where Charles Dickens once lived. It was 1837. Charles Dickens was 25 when he moved in here with his wife and baby son, a rising literary star in a newly built house, now a museum. He wasn't here long before fame, fortune and a growing family led him to a bigger home. But of course he would have spent several Christmases here, sitting in this very chair, surrounded by friends and family, in this typical Victorian drawing room. And it could have been a washroom like this that might have inspired the story about Mrs. Cratchit using a boiler or a copper to cook her Christmas pudding. Like a speckled cannonball ignited with blazing brandy. And there'd be plenty of Christmas spirit of the alcoholic kind flowing from the wine cellar here in Doughty Street, just as there is in A Christmas Carol. Large bowls of punch and Bob Cratchit's special cocktail of warm gin and herbs. Well, Dickens was certainly prolific while he lived here. He completed Oliver Twist, he wrote Nicholas Nickleby and part of Pickwick Papers. A Christmas Carol will come later, but this museum holds many fascinating items related to this magical story.
I picked a few little treasures we've got today. Here is a copy of Christmas Carol that actually belonged to Dickens's father. In fact, you can see Dickens's father's signature there, John Dickens, at the top. Quite a nice little item because, as you can see, it's all blue and red. But when Dickens originally was given this copy, he was given it with green and red titles, which we associate with Christmas. He rejected it and went for blue and red.
And tell me a bit about the picture. Who did that?
Well, the illustrator was called John Leach. He was a friend of Dickens's, and you can see these lovely little hand-coloured paintings throughout the book. Cost a lot of money. In fact, Dickens didn't make much money through these.
And what else have you got?
Well, also another scene on this fan of Fezziwig and his wife dancing. This was actually painted by Dickens's daughter, who was born in this house. Again, a nice little Christmas item. There's the mistletoe again over Fezziwig and his wife.
So she's copied this illustration, yes?
That's right. She was an artist in her own right, a very interesting woman. In fact, she opened the museum in 1925. I think that the Christmas Carol story has a lot of elements that we associate now with Christmas, and Dickens sort of reinvented the feeling of Christmas. During the period, the first Christmas card was sent as well, so a lot of the customs that we have now starting with this little tale.
And you've brought another book along?
Well, Dickens didn't only write Christmas Carol, he wrote a number of other Christmas books as well. This is The Chimes, and I particularly like this one because Dickens has inscribed it to that other great writer, Hans Christian Andersen, who was a friend of his.
Christmas is always a good time for selling books, and Charles Dickens certainly knew about that. Back in November 1843, he rushed to publish A Christmas Carol to reach the festive market. But he made a loss on the first print run in his effort to make it affordable for the working classes. Oh, hang on a minute, I better go and get that.
How exciting! The lady bearing gifts is Julia Eccleshare,
Lovely.
the children's book critic. She's been busy reading the latest releases to pick the books she'd most like to see under the tree this Christmas.
Well, I bought something for all ages, and I started with the very youngest, with a new book by Julia Donaldson and Axel Scheffler, who did The Gruffalo. The Tiddler is late for school, and of course there's a story as to why, and it's all the things that happen to him as to why he's late.
Once there was a fish, and his name was Tiddler. He wasn't much to look at, with his plain grey scales. But Tiddler was a fish with a big imagination. He blew small bubbles, but he told tall tales.
It's a great book about writing as well as a great story to read. I mean, it's a great book to share with a very young child, but I think it's a great classroom book as well because it's a spur to writing.
And the next one?
It's a wonderful idea. It's The Adventures of the Dish and the Spoon, and of course it's a wonderful love affair. There's the dish and the spoon running away, and they go off and they have a wonderful time and they float off to America. But then, of course, the dream turns, terrible. It all goes wrong and they end up living in poverty. Well, first they have the riches. It's the riches and then to the rags. This wonderful picture of the savage cutlery out to get them. Terrifying stuff. It's about adversity, but it's also about how love sees you through. It's just a wonderful take on an old story,
yes.
Giving it a new twist. And I think Minnie Gray is a fantastic illustrator. I mean, I think all her books have been wonderful. I know this is a very old favourite, Catherine Store's Clever Polly and the Stupid Wolf, but I was brought up on this. We don't have enough short stories that are, quick to get the whole of an episode.
Very good for 6 and 7-year-olds in particular.
Very good for 6 and 7-year-olds. Very good for reading aloud to younger children. You can save the planet, a day in the life of your carbon footprint. It just does make you think about what you're doing. And if children don't start thinking about it very young, we're never going to make any changes.
And it might even be useful for adults who don't know what a carbon footprint is.
Are you talking of yourself?
Yes.
Well, yeah, it would tell you about your carbon footprint. But it makes you think what you're doing during the day. Very interestingly, given how much the adult world has taken on climate change, how little children's book writers have tackled the issue. There's very little fiction about climate change, and I just thought this was a really good book. Meg Rosoff's What I Was, it's a very powerful, very strange story about a boy at boarding school. It's about trying to find some freedom, trying to find some space, and trying to find yourself. anybody who has experienced wanting to get out of a group and finding something on their own will just love this. Jenny Downham's Before I Die should be a really depressing book. I mean, if I tell you it's a story about a 17-year-old dying of cancer, you would think it was just kind of awful. And everyone I know has cried, even me, and I'm quite hard-hearted.
Death straps me to the hospital bed, claws its way onto my chest, and sits there. I didn't know it would hurt this much. I didn't know that everything good that's ever happened in my life would be emptied out by it. I catch the weight of glances, nurse to doctor, doctor to dad. Their hushed voices, panic spills from dad's throat. Not yet, not yet.
It is incredibly moving, and she decides she has to do various things before she dies. She has to try sex, she has to try drugs, she drives. She's never taken a driving test. That is a bit of a terrifying moment in the book. Actually, as an adult, you sort of think, I'm not sure I like this. But it also explores what her younger brother's feeling, what her father's feeling, and it's just an incredibly sensitive novel. The thing about all of these, you know, when people get given a book, they always think, oh, a book, and it's kind of like not the most exciting present. But with all of these, they're the thing you will remember after Christmas, because when you go back and read it, it will last you far longer than those things. It's a kind of, oh my goodness, how wonderful. So great
Terrific
gifts.
selection. Thanks ever so much. There's some wonderful seasonal poetry around, like this one by my old mate Ian Macmillan. I keep my snowman in the freezer, just behind the pies. He likes it there, he told me so. I can see it in his eyes. Well, I've been sharing that one and a lot more besides with some of the children at St Albans Primary School.
As Children's Laureate, I've become something of a poetry missionary, visiting schools all over the country.
I want to do all I can to help parents, teachers and children enjoy poetry together. So instead of treating it as this rather cold stuff that we have to dissect, I'm trying to reconnect it with performance and pleasure. Dun, 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 dun. Well, look, hello everybody. So my name's Michael Rosen. And I tell you what, shall we start with something very simple? Shall we start with our thumbs? You do that? And then we're going to put your finger over there. Okay? Am I looking over there? No. And then we're going to look for your other thumb. That's probably going to be on your other hand. Okay? And then you put that thumb on the end of that finger, and then you get that finger and put it on the end of your thumb, and you've got a window. No. I know what it is. It's a telly. Tell you what, you could put your cheek on the telly, and that programme is called Don't Be Cheeky. Don't be cheeky. I know, and you could put your nose on the telly. And that programme could be called, I know, Don't Be Nosy.